This video is all about the squat. Probably next to the golf swing, one of the most analyzed movements in exercise science or sports. The squat itself is a fairly complex movement, and as load gets applied to the body, the mechanics may change slightly, but inevitably there should be some commonalities no matter if you're loading heavy weights or not. And I say that because you're going to go through many different variations of squats in your program, as well as you'll probably see a variety of squats being performed in the gym, and you'll start to scratch your head and question, which way should I be going? Well, that's going to be the never-ending question in the fitness industry itself. But let's go through some of the basic things that we're looking for. Foot placement. We should have it somewhere about hip, perhaps shoulder width apart. But know that there's a variety of foot positions that we can maintain. We can have one foot forward or the other foot forward, a wide stance, a very narrow stance, or somewhat neutral in between. We can have the feet turned out or turned in. And then if we start to make combinations of all those, if you do the math, we come up with 27 different foot positions that you can adjust or experience while doing the squat. And it's not a bad idea to give yourself some novelty and explore that. But for this particular video, we're just going to stick with the parallel, neutral position of the feet. One is not forward of the other. They're very parallel in that respect. The feet are not too wide nor too narrow. That Goldilocks spot of neutrality, somewhere kind of in between. And with the squat, it's essentially just like sitting down in a chair. What we want to do is imagine that there's a chair behind you and stick your hips back and have a seat. And then stand on up again. That's really what we're doing. We're training ourselves how to sit better and how to get out of a chair. That is what the squat is. And as long as we use restrooms for the rest of our lives, the squat is a really important exercise. So it's not a bad idea to get a handle on it, so that you don't have to use handles later in life. So with the squat, from a profile perspective, I'm just going to use the wall to support myself as I slowly go into it, just to demonstrate. Many people will begin or initiate the movement by bending into their knees, and then the knees get to a point where they can't move anymore, and then the hips start to push back. Now that puts a lot of strain on the knees, and it's something that we're going to try and avoid. Initially, we want the hips to be the primary mover in this action, and we want gravity to just kind of pull us into the position that we should be in. We're not trying to pull ourselves down, by the way. We're allowing gravity just to collapse us toward the ground, and we're using the muscles to slow and control that deceleration or that collapse toward earth. Then the muscles have to shorten and drive us back on up away from the floor. So in this position, we initiate the hips going into the action. We keep the weight primarily centered over the midfoot. You may feel more weight slightly in the heels, so anywhere between that region is going to be ideal. If you begin feeling more pressure in the toes, then what might be happening is the hips get to a certain point, and then the stiffness or restriction around the hips and pelvis start to kick in, and the torso begins to lower more than the hips do. And your head continues to go down, so unconsciously, you're probably feeling like, wow, I'm going really deep into my squat. When in fact, you're actually just bending over and loading a lot of the muscles in the lower back. So we want to watch out for that not to occur. So as you descend, we really want to see that the hips and shoulders are lowering at the same time. That one does not stop and the other continues on, but they come down and they have a place where they stop, and then they return back on up. Now we'll hope to see that the shoulder and hip lower down to a point that is a parallel line to the shins themselves. So as I get down in this position here, we should see this angle and my spine angle being relatively parallel with each other, and then driving back up. Now this is kind of hard to get a handle on, especially if you're trying to be facing forward and you don't have the use of a mirror or a camera off to your side to kind of capture what you're doing. So just think of this. As you're descending down into the squat, you're just going to try and keep the torso or your sternum flashing a light straight out from the chest, straight ahead. The head stays looking straight ahead with the chest, and then you drive back up again. Now I'm reaching out with my hands because my arms are acting as a counterbalance, allowing me to bring some of my mass forward while quite a bit of it goes back, and that will keep my balance right over my feet. You can hold on to a medicine ball or even a dumbbell or anything else for that matter to start to initiate this motion. And then once you get familiar with this action, you can maybe start putting extra weight on your body in the form of dumbbells, a barbell, medicine balls, kettlebells, bands, whatever you want to use. But it's important that you start to work on the proper execution of the exercise, allowing the ankles to flex, the knees to flex, the hips to flex, and all occurring at the same time while the torso stays in a fairly upright position. And then everything begins to extend on the way back up. Be sure to assess before and after this movement to make sure this is what you were looking for in terms of exercise into your program. If it is something that gives you a positive response, awesome. We're going to just keep that in your program for a little bit, maybe take it out every now and then, put it back in, because in your program we're hoping to see that not only are you doing the exercises that you can perform well and gives you good feedback, but every now and then you put in the ones that are challenging and see if you are at a point where you can now start to integrate those other exercises that in previous times you've had to leave off to the side.